Wait a minute, did I skip one?
Yeah, but we'll do that one. We'll go. This can be 3. There's no order.
Just like everything with us, there's just no order.
It's just random.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, the show that will absolutely transform the way you learn HIPAA. I promise you, it will be a journey. This podcast is brought to you today by the letter K. No, not really. Actually, it's brought to you by HIPAA Compliance and HIPAA for MSPs. My name is David Sims, and I am from HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me, as always, today is my co-host, Donna Grindle from HIPAA Compliance. How are you today, Donna?
I am just chipper. You, Dave?
I'm great.
I blew it.
I'm great. Do what?
I accidentally said Dave.
Don't call me Dave.
I know.
So today's podcast comes as a result of a question that we got, and it was a little too much to answer within one of our short HIPAA Answers episodes. So we decided to take it on in a full-blown podcast. And the question was around what should a practice look for in getting a HIPAA-compliant IT company? So I think this was going to be a really good podcast because you and I both are very familiar with HIPAA-compliant IT companies, especially being that I have one.
And me too.
And for those of you who don't know what HIPAA for MSPs is, that's a website for IT managed service providers to train them in HIPAA compliance, among other things. So we're very familiar with the topic of today, and Donna has taken the liberty of narrowing this down to about 6 things to look for that you should expect from your tech support or your IT company. And I think we could probably even do 60 instead of just 6 things to look for. But I think the ones that Donna has put down are really the core things that if you don't have any of these 6, if you don't have a check mark by all 6 of these, then you probably should question whether or not you should be using this IT company. So these are, I think, very core basic things that you must have before you even decide to move forward with them. So anything that you would like to say on that?
Well, first of all, I think that it's interesting that you said that we really know about this topic, like we don't know about the other topics that we've been talking about. I'm just saying, but we do. And what I would like to say is that, it's not like there's a checklist. And when we're talking about these, we're making the assumption that it's somebody that you're contracting with month to month. It's not somebody that you're just going to call when you have a random problem. Because if you don't have a regular contract, then these things are all out the window because the IT company really would be handcuffed. They wouldn't be able to provide a lot of these. Right, David?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, right. And the way that HIPAA is written, it actually says, and I don't have it in front of me to tell you the exact wording it uses, but it says that systems have to be monitored in such a way that you can detect problems and deploy solutions on an ongoing basis, which means if you just have somebody come in and do work on an as-needed basis, or when something breaks, they come in and fix it, then you're not doing that piece. You're not checking things on an ongoing basis and making sure that you're not having problems and addressing those problems when they pop up, or sometimes even before they become problems. And you can only do that with a managed service provider type IT company.
Right. So that being said, we're making that assumption when we go through this.
All right. So as you assume,
no.
So the first thing we'll dive into. So number 1 on your checklist, make sure you write this down. You need a technology provider that looks at the big picture, and not just a count of your routers and computers, servers, or your other devices. Yes,
that is the first item I put on the list. And the reason that I put it there is we both know that there are a lot of people that the IT companies that all they want to know, how many devices you have. I'll give you a quote. And that's it. They don't really delve in and ask any questions, beyond, okay, well, we're healthcare and we need you to sign a BAA. Okay. That right away tells me a lot of things. Number one is they don't understand the complexities of a healthcare environment. Now, if we're talking about a business associate, and we know some of you guys are business associates, that's a different arena, but it should still apply the same way. Is if I just come in and all I ask about are devices, I'm not looking at the big picture of what healthcare requires. Because I want to understand how compliant are you with security. I don't want to just know how many devices are connected. And I understand, we just talked about it before we started recording, people don't realize how many things are connected to their network. You just had this issue.
Yeah, I did.
So, you've been working with them for months and you finally walk into a room and you're like, there's computers in this room. Nobody told me this room was even here. Mm-hmm. So you can't just make that assumption, take a few notes and then get a quote. I need to know that potentially there's going to be devices and ask about mobile devices and not just phones and tablets, but how many mobile devices like cardiology uses the Holter monitors, and you'll have ENT groups using different things that track and manage healthcare information that they're going to connect to the network in some way possibly. So there's a lot more to it to sit down and really evaluate you as an environment that has a lot of risk and a lot of things that need to be managed. It's not just a quick, give me a number. Mm-hmm. You got nothing to say there?
I agree with everything. So I can't argue with you now, dadgummit. we need to get a podcast going where I can argue with you more.
Oh, God. That would be a good one.
That would be a good one. So the second one on your list, so pull over right quick and let's write this one down. You need a technology provider who asks more questions than expected. And this, I think, is an interesting one because what ends up happening, at least for me, in my experiences, when I start asking those too many questions, people tend to get very uncomfortable because they start realizing that they're not as in good a shape as they thought they were.
Well, yeah. Or if you're asking those questions and I know I'm expecting you to and I'm prepared for you to, but if you don't ever ask them, then I'm concerned. So even if you are expecting them and you know them, that doesn't mean give them the answer ahead of time unless they've already impressed you with their knowledge the way David would when he first starts talking to you.
Yes, you will just be blinded by my brilliance.
But it's the number, and we've talked about this before. We know, and there's nothing that gets up our craw more than anything of a healthcare IT provider who says, don't worry, we're HIPAA compliant.
HIPAA certified.
One or the other. They're just, you're not. I am an IT company. I have an IT company that is a healthcare IT company that understands HIPAA. I'm not a certified healthcare IT company. You're not either, because I refuse to certify you even when you whined and asked.
I did not. You said I was certifiable. That's all you said.
Yeah. But the important part is that there's so many companies that'll they tell people that they are, oh yeah, we're HIPAA compliant, we're HIPAA certified, and then they never delve any deeper and ask a lot of questions. Going back to the first point is they should be looking at the big picture. And in order to look at the big picture of all the things that are going on in your practice, not just simply a network with some stuff attached, like a very basic approach to IT, you need one that's really going to ask all of those additional questions.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And they should wait, and it's not just a bunch of questions. So, it's not like they can just line up and start asking questions about each individual computer. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about, let me ask you how your practice functions in certain areas when I'm in there working on stuff. I'm not talking about questions just at the beginning. You know what I mean? Because how many times do you go into an office and you're just like walking by an office, you're walking through to put in another machine, or you're putting in a printer or fixing something, and you see somebody over there doing something that you know is wrong, or doing something that you're like, why are they doing it that way? They could do it more efficiently, or is something not working right that's causing them to take 5 extra steps to do things? Or, my favorite is you see them opening and slamming a printer 2 or 3 times, and they say, well, if you do this, it works. Stuff like that, or bang on it, it works. No, wait. Let's not do that. So it's asking the questions of, do you do that every day? Or, I've been into places before where they take me all, the maze of the practice, and you go way back in there. And then when you finally get back there to where the servers are in a room, and, the good news is it's not really in a public area, and you kind of like that. And it's back in this area where I was wandering around, and there's a door. And I'm like, where does this door go? Well, it goes outside. And I open the door and I look, and there are the elevators right there. So I came off the elevators, went down this hallway, go in the front door, weave my way back all the way through, and I'm back at the server. But the thing is, that door is unlocked all the time because doctors like to come in it. So the server's hidden from the people that are coming in the real good door. But if you get off the elevator and open the door that's right in front of you with no sign on it, you see a room that has the door open where the server is. You can just walk in there, take it, and leave.
That can be a good metaphor for their technology.
Well, at that point, you ask a question. Do you realize that this is kind of defeating the purpose of all of your security if you have it not physically secured? You're supposed to do that too. But it's those kinds of questions that you want them to ask. You want your IT people to not just look at it and see it and think, well, that's really not secure. Let me do what I need to do on the server and leave. No, bring it up. Talk about it. At least call their boss, if it's the tech person that's there. Call the boss and say, by the way, I'm just telling you I found this, which is, we deal with that often. People will call us and our people will say, did you know they're doing this? No, I did not. So that's what I'm talking about there.
Well, you bring up a couple of good points. One is, I think that one of the first things they should be asking you as an IT provider is, where's your data? Where is it going? How does it flow through your practice? And so they can get an idea of what it is they need to be protecting and where everything is moving. Because oftentimes, as you know, you'll find out that what they tell you and what is actually happening is usually very different. And so what you have to do is figure out where that is. A lot of times I hear people say, well, we don't have any PHI on our computers. It's all cloud-based. I have to laugh because I've never seen a client yet where that is really the case. They always have PHI on every computer, and they think they don't, but they do.
You were there when I was speaking at the conference that we were at, and it was a cloud provider, and I asked the people in the room, do any of you store PHI? Does anybody store PHI on your individual computers? The whole room, no one raised their hand. No, that's only on the servers. No. And I said, how many of you download a report from the application for reporting in meetings? And the whole room raised their hand.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there you go.
The word download not mean anything. You can configure it now. Let me be clear. You can configure it so that things like your downloads folder automatically goes to the server and never goes to your individual computer. But by far, most people don't have it configured that way. Mm-hmm. Just saying.
Yeah. So they should be asking questions about that. And how are you running your practice? How are you accessing the data? What are you doing with it when you access it? Where are you, like Donna said, downloading things too? What are you downloading? I mean, there should be a ton of questions that they're asking you. on an ongoing basis.
Well, and the cases where when you do healthcare and it's going to continue to grow, there are a large number of interfaces. There's a lot of data that's moving back and forth between different systems, different vendors, from the hospital to the providers and the payers and all over the place. If I never ask how many kinds of interfaces do you have, then how can I help you be sure they're secured?
Mm-hmm.
You let
Absolutely.
the vendors come in and set up these interfaces, and your IT people don't even know they exist. They don't know how to watch out for them. So there you go.
So number 3, you need a technology provider that is proactive in providing you with reports. Wait a minute, did I skip one?
Yeah, but we'll do that one. We'll go. This can be 3. There's no order.
Just like everything with us, there's just no order.
It's just random.
Just no order. That's what happens when you scroll up the screen on your notes. You lose your place. So,
user error.
In no particular order, we're going to do. So they need to be providing you with reports, audits, follow-ups, and monitoring that HIPAA requires.
Are you done? Did you get that out?
I got that out, yeah. So just remind me, make sure I go back up to the other one.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad I'm here for you. So we've talked before. We had an episode on documentation. If you don't document it, didn't happen. So to say, yes, we have an IT company that monitors everything for us and now we're all done, doesn't really meet your HIPAA requirements.
Mm-mm. And I've had clients before, or potential clients anyway, call me and say, we have a current IT company. We're interested in talking to you. And I usually ask, what are they doing for you and all this kind of stuff. And one of the first questions I'll say is, are they monitoring your systems? And a lot of times it'll be yes. Okay. Are they providing you with reports? And the answer is usually no.
Yeah. And we're not talking like, a big dump of logs or anything like that. I'm talking, give me some pretty pictures or something.
Yeah, just a summary report with graphs. And the ones that do have that, I'll even go further. I'll say, okay, are they providing you any information on these reports? Or do you know that they're actually going through the reports and looking at stuff? Or are they just sending them to you? Mm-hmm. Because, most MSPs have their system set up to automatically just send those reports out. So they're not really, a lot of times not looking at them. They usually look at the daily logs, mm-hmm. but not necessarily the monthly reports. Those are just automatically sent to the clients. What we do is we have the monthly report sent to us, then we review them, make notes on them and all that, then manually send those out.
Yeah, that's what we do too. Because we want to make sure we're actually looking at these things. And if for the same reasons, we're looking at the daily logs, but we're all human. And computers are constantly screwing up because we screw them up often. But those automated things that help highlight things for us, maybe they're not highlighting something that we need to see. And so that's why we make sure. And also, it's okay, this month, your antivirus detected a rash of malware coming in, and it quarantined it and it captured it. And then we can make a note that says, yeah, we double checked it. It's bad stuff. We deleted it from inventory, from quarantine, whatnot. But if there is something listed on the reports, make sure that they're saying they actually took care of it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I actually was reviewing recently one of our clients. They were getting reports from the IT company, and they said they didn't have all of this stuff. Well, the reason was it was basically a ticket list, and it would say the report came through. So every day it would create a checklist for them to review for their ticket of, okay, the monitoring report came in today. Here's the checklist. I review X, Y, and Z. But it's actually so much detail that the client didn't even understand they were getting pretty much what they needed. They just had to manually pull it out of there.
Right.
So, but it's my answer was the fact that you're not able to pull the information out by yourself cumbersome, and you may want to see if you can work with them to stream it better. But technically, you're getting the information that you need that shows the things are being monitored and activity is taking place to address the problems that it finds. And they're making sure that things are staying up to date, or they're bringing it to your attention if there's an issue.
Mm-hmm.
But you shouldn't have to beg them for a report.
Sure you do. Well, another thing, too, that practices need to understand is that there are so many other technologies out there that your provider may have access to, and hopefully they're letting you know this, but if not, it's a good idea to ask questions, especially when it comes to auditing, because, like, for instance, we just recently brought in another vendor, and we've interviewed this vendor and all that. So it's Sphere, so we've talked about them before, but we recently brought them in as a vendor so that we are able to now offer a service where we can do access those audit logs from within their EMR and EHR program to make sure that there's no anomalies there or things that people maybe shouldn't be accessing or doing within their system. And that's something we couldn't offer even a month ago because we have a new technology and a new vendor. So it's always great to touch base with your IT company, and they should be touching base with you, but it never hurts to say, hey, we are interested in this particular solution. Do you have it? And they may not have it, but it may give them something to go and look for.
Well, and that takes it to the next level of, you don't want a technology provider who says that, well, you didn't ask for it.
Yeah. Or we don't offer it. So, you have to stay within what we offer, and that's just it. Too bad.
Yeah. Which is a perfect segue to the number 3 that was supposed to come before this one. So it works out that you gave us a perfect segue.
I know. See, I can't even mess up when I mess up. So the next one is, you need to make sure you have a technology provider that isn't afraid to say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I'll see what I can find out.
Yeah. That's what you don't want them to say. And often you'll ask and they're like, well, I don't know. We can't do that. Or no, we don't do that. And it just ends there. It's like, okay, I have spoken.
Yeah. Especially when it comes to HIPAA, because I tell, the members of HIPAA for MSPs, I tell them all the time, you don't have to focus on, memorizing the law and having an answer immediately when somebody asks. Just say, look, I know that I heard something about it, or I read something about it, or I'm not sure at all, but I know where I can find the answer, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. In most cases, you don't need an answer immediately, maybe unless you got a breach going on.
Yeah.
But other than that, it's not a bad thing that you have to wait an hour or two or whatever it is to give somebody the correct answer rather than giving them a incorrect answer immediately.
Well, and you can even say, I'll get back to you later this week. I have a business partner like HIPAA for MSPs or Card and Compliance. I work with them to address that and give me that kind of input. And let me check in with them, and I'll get back to you as soon as I get an answer from them. That usually just takes a day or two.
Yeah. And a lot of times the questions aren't quite so cut and dry. So
right.
there's often been times where you and I have bounced things back and forth, and even sometimes even reached out to other people. Mm-hmm. And we haven't often agreed.
Exactly.
on what the law says and how we interpret it. But that's just unfortunately kind of the way it is on certain things. But for the most part, a lot of it is really black and white.
Mm-hmm. And well, or at least, there's the answer that I often give. We can do that, but I am certain you don't want to pay what that'll cost.
Yeah.
Because there is that, but it's okay. I'm going to tell you that this cost $30,000 for you to implement it, and then it's going to cost $10,000 a year.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you want to do that? I'm not afraid to give you those numbers, and I'm not trying to scare you off. Here's the answer that I have. And if you are interested, tell me what you're willing to pay for it, and I'll see if I can get it down to that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's certainly not something where you're supposed to know all the answers, because it's impossible to know all the answers.
Right. Yeah, you're not. I mean, even the ones that are out there doing HIPAA all day, every day, they still have questions as well. I mean, we're members of forums online, and we see, they throw questions out there just like everybody else does. There's still people that need help. It's too complex, it's too big, it's too huge. The way it's written offers a lot of questions sometimes, depending on what it is. So,
well, the scenarios. I was working with a client, and the way their business is structured, just the legal structure of it and how it's all made. I had to draw a picture so I could figure it all out to make sure I had it down, and got a perfect picture of it. But on the flip side of this, now you want an IT provider that will say, "Hey, we don't know that, but we have a lot of contacts and we can figure this out. Let me get back to you." And they actually do get back to you. That's key. But on the flip side of that, you need to understand that we've had this more than once, and I assume that you have too, where we get complaints from clients. I don't want to pay for this because your person was sitting here looking things up. You're supposed to know it. You shouldn't have to look things up online. What? That's also a thing that you need to understand is we do have to look things up. We have to find the steps that we want to use, or, we know this scenario, and the difference between you paying me to look that up and not paying me to look that up is try finding it yourself. Okay, I know that was rude. I shouldn't say that.
Bad.
I know.
It's no different than a lawyer, because HIPAA is a law. It's a government law.
Well, it's not even HIPAA. It's the tech stuff.
Yeah. Well, either one.
Yeah.
Really, you have to go and figure out, okay, this is what I need to do, and what solutions are out there that I can do this with in a way that fits that environment, because some IT providers will fit everybody within what they do, and that's it. Mm-hmm. So if they don't offer it or they don't do it that way, they're not going to make a change from that because they want everybody to be the same.
Yeah.
And then you have others that come in and they say, we would like for everybody to be the same because it makes it easier for us to manage. But if your practice needs to be somewhere else or using something different, then we need to use whatever is reasonable and appropriate for you because it's reasonable and appropriate for you. It might not be appropriate for me to have to manage it or, because I got to learn something different. But, that's, I think, a good IT provider, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think a good IT provider will take on that challenge because that's what's right for you as a client.
But don't expect a discount for them having to, you're going to get to learn something new, so you should give me a discount. No.
Yeah.
So needless to say, that I don't know, but I will find out is, twofold, because if we ask you a question or your IT provider rather ask you a question, don't make stuff up and don't panic, because, eventually we will either spin our wheels and come back and have to re-ask, or we'll figure out that you didn't tell us the truth. So one or the other, but go ahead and just tell us. Just say, I don't know what happened, if you really don't know, but the story of, I didn't do anything, I didn't change anything, I didn't touch anything, and then we find 3 or 4 things that have been installed in the last 2 or 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you did something. Now, why didn't you tell me? Well, I was embarrassed. I was afraid I made the mistake. Well, you did. All right, so we need to move on.
You can take the position as some government officials do when they're on TV. I do not recall.
I do not recall. That's better than I did nothing.
Yeah.
All right.
So the next one is you need to make sure you have a technology provider who will double check and document even the smallest changes done while supporting you.
Yeah.
And this rolls right into the documentation part you just mentioned. If they don't document it, then it didn't happen. And I can guarantee you they won't remember it months later, what they did or what they found or how they resolved it. So documentation is key.
Well, and another thing that we make sure we have documents that we use, which are forms that we use for big things like destroying data, because you're supposed to have documentation that you properly destroyed, like a hard drive you take out or any of those kind of things. What kind of proper destruction did you have of it? And then The other piece of that is I'm going to put in a new firewall. And when I put in that new firewall, if I accidentally make a mistake and I don't document everything I did, then you can't come back and be certain it was done right the first time, number one. And number two, you want to be sure that we're double checking things because, again, it's just human. And the wall of shame is indeed full of cases with where somebody just, they did something and they forgot about it. And there was no, okay, I finally solved this very complicated problem. Whew, that's taken hours. Now I don't remember to go back and clean up and make sure I didn't open some ports in the firewall to resolve the issue to make it easier to figure out. Because that's a common practice, is to open up the firewall so that I can remove that as what's causing the problem, that something's being blocked. I mean, you and I do it. We have to do it all the time. And the other common practice would be, moving data. There was one of the ones that is on the wall of shame, I think, is that an IT service tech was working on a storage issue and they needed to do something. So they took this big chunk of data and moved it temporarily to another server that didn't have full protections. And it should have been there a very short amount of time and then moved back. They forgot to move it back. And then it was found unprotected. So it's having that level of checking and double checking. So even if you think it's overkill, be happy that they're doing it.
Yep. And if you're not seeing it done, then you should ask questions.
Yeah. You don't want overconfident. You want confident. You just don't want overconfident.
Yeah. Just because somebody may be HIPAA compliant or they may understand HIPAA doesn't always mean that you're secure and protected. So you should definitely ask questions.
Yep.
Which brings us to our last one. You need to make sure that your technology provider is taking HIPAA seriously.
Yes.
Seriously.
Seriously. You want them to be serious about it.
Yep. So, here's the thing. I guess this is my question to you, Donna. For listeners, what can we tell them is maybe 1 or 2, 3 things that they can look for or ask questions about that would give them an indication that their technology provider is in fact taking HIPAA seriously and not just saying they're HIPAA compliant?
Well, one of the things that you can do, we use we've talked before about, we do business associate due diligence. And a lot of groups now start with, we're not even going to talk to you any further or get a quote until we get this answer to our due diligence. So that's step number 1, is don't even bother negotiating a contract with a business associate anymore unless you get the due diligence answers. And the due diligence to us is not something to see that they're perfect. It's something to see that they have a compliance program. It's not like they just checked a box somewhere and said, okay, yeah, we do HIPAA. So number 1 is to start with that. But then to take it a step further, now ask them about their HIPAA training. What kind of documentation? Give me the details of the kind of documentation that you do internally. I don't want to see it and I don't want you to share it, but I want to know how you manage HIPAA internally on your own in your office. Not what you're going to do for me. I want to know how you do it in your office. Because if they just blow it off and they say, well, everybody gets video training once a year, then that's a little different, because I can assure you that if you get video training once a year, and that's really all they worry about, they're not going to do all of those other things, no matter what, because they're not thinking about it constantly. So getting those kinds of, have a conversation with them specifically about HIPAA security and how they address it. And it should be a conversation. It shouldn't be 2 or 3 sentences and they're done.
Right.
And the longer they can address it internally, or the better they address it internally, rather, that gives you a direct indication of how seriously they'll take it for you. And so many, you and I talk all the time that IT companies tend to think, oh, I've got this because all it is just security. Mm-hmm. It's just like PCI. It's just like this, or it's just like that. It's not. It is not like all those other things. It requires extensive documentation. It requires training. It requires knowledge and security awareness and all these other things that you don't normally see in every environment. So if you can get them to talk about their own program and what they do, and it's not just we do training once a year because that's what we're obligated to do, and you know that we're secure because we're an IT company.
Yeah, it's almost, you almost want to think that if somebody's overconfident, that's almost a red flag.
Yeah.
Because if they really know HIPAA and understand HIPAA, then I don't know that there's ever a time when you should be really overconfident. You should always be questioning yourself and questioning your clients and everything that you do, because you can be compliant today and completely out of compliance tomorrow. So it should always be something you're working toward. Well,
and, the mantra that we all know is it's not if, it's when.
Yeah, it's when, yep. At some point, it's going to get you.
Yeah, you're going to have security issues. You're going to have problems. It's not if, it's when. And to say, well, we're just going to protect you from all of that. You don't have to worry about anything. I can't go along with that. It's just not.
No, I mean, look on the wall of shame and follow it. They can do, your IT company can come in and do everything just miraculously perfect, with security and IT. But that doesn't mean you won't have a breach. You could have a laptop that's stolen or an employee do something crazy. There's just so many different ways that can happen above and beyond what your IT company is doing.
Yes. But I think we've talked long enough today. We've kind of gone a little long here.
Not me.
Yeah, really.
I try to get you to hush.
Okay. I'm done with you for today.
Fine. So with that said, that's our show for today. So we thank you for listening, but do one thing for us. If you'll help us out and go over and give us a review on iTunes, it would make it super easy for other people to find us and listen to all the crazy stuff that Donna comes up with. You can also share this episode on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn or your favorite social media platform, and we would much appreciate it. You can visit us at our website at www.helpmewithhipaa.com. And right there on the homepage, you can even leave us a question, and we may even feature that question in a future podcast. So on behalf of Donna and myself, remember, HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.